So hi everyone, my name's Lee. I have the wonderful opportunity to be teaching you guys this semester for lab. And we also have the wonderful Aliana to be helping us this semester. um, so hopefully you guys will be interactive. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to toss into the chat or interrupt me at any time. I like to keep my labs pretty chill, and so I don't really care if you interrupt me, as long as you're getting the most out of this lab. So let's get started. So we want to first start off, I want you guys to please navigate to the Lab 2 instructions. And this will be located on Canvas. If you can find this by going to the home page, and my view may be different because I do have instructor access. So don't feel scared if you don't see the exact same thing as what's on my screen. What's important for you is to go down to this Lab 2 instructions and click that. And for this lab, I want you to go and download this drawfigures.java. So I'm going to go ahead and download that. It might redirect you to a Google Drive, which is completely fine. You can easily just click download from there, and it should just go into your downloads. Okay. And while we are on Canvas, I also would want you guys to open the Lab 2 quiz. And how labs are structured, I kind of want you guys to have the lab quiz open on the side so that you can answer the lab quiz questions as we're going through the lab, because generally while we're doing this, I will essentially be helping you answer these questions. I may not say it out explicitly, but yeah, I'm going to walk you through this lab quiz. So it's very advantageous for you to have it open on the side. So going back to the lab instructions, hopefully you guys have this drawfigures.java download. It's a pretty small file, so it should go fairly quickly. But to get started, we are going to make a CS1410 or a CS1410 lab project. And if you guys haven't done that yet, which I have not, we're going to go to Eclipse. Up at the top, click File, New, and we're going to want to make a Java project, okay? So again, that is File, New, Java project. Okay, and then we're going to click Next. And the project name at this very top, I'm going to name it CS1410 Labs. Okay, and then for the project layout, we want to have this radio button selected, which is create separate folders for sources and class files. And that's under project layout. Okay, and then I want to click Next, finish, create. Oh my gosh, wait, did I do create?
The module info.
I'm so sorry. That was really bad of me. If you do this, please just delete the module info. Hopefully this will still run. Okay. And this is our CS1410 lab, folder, okay? And then inside the project, create a lab 2 package. So file, new, or right click on the project name. Okay, so let's do new package. Was that what we're making? Project. New project.
Could you slow down a little bit?
Yes, sorry. I will do that. So if you guys are confused, let me just close that. We have just created the CS1410 labs project folder. Why do we want to use packages? So packages is essentially a way for us to organize all of our different Java like projects that you're going to make. And essentially packages are like subfolders within this big folder, because some projects, it will have multiple Java like projects combined to run. And we'll later learn about that. And when everything is just in one package, your program can essentially grab information from different Java files to use that to run. We don't want to essentially give them access to every Java file that you have, because that's essentially a lot of work for your program to be doing. That's my guess. I hope that answers your question. What's the package's name? Okay, let's see on our instructions. Inside the project, create a lab2 package. That's what we want, the name to be lab2. How do we get the package explorer to show up? I think you can do window, show view, and then there is like, this is package explorer. Hopefully that helps. I know that I'm using an Apple, like a Mac, so that might be different for Windows. So let's see. Inside the project, I'm on Mac 2, found it. Cool. Inside the project, create a lab2 package. Project name. He wants us to make package lab2. Okay, what I just did there was I right-clicked and then I select package. So let me do that one more time. I right-clicked on source, new, and then under new, I want a new package. And then from this new package, I want to call it lab2. We do not want to create a package info.java. Okay. So now we have this lab2 within our source folder, and it's going to be like this grayed out box. What I want to do from here is I want to take that Java program that I had just downloaded, and I want to click and drag it into my lab2, that gray folder. Okay. And it's going to have this pop-up that says, select how files should be imported into the project. Just select the copy files and then do OK. And then once you do that, it should color in this gray box. Yes, we do want to delete the module info.java. That was my bad. I'm sorry, guys. If we do this drop down in lab2, you're going to see that that drawfigures.java file that you downloaded from Canvas will be in there. And so let's double click that, and it should pop up within the middle panel. And this is like the editor view. And from here, we can just run it right off the bat and see what happens. Editor does not contain a main type. Excuse me. Run as Java application. Aliana, help.
I am not running to that, but I can open mine if yours doesn't work.
You guys, that's so good that your guys is working. Aliana, I think you're gonna have to take over.
Okay, that's good. Hold on.
So.
Let me open it for a second.
Mine downloaded as an Atom file, so it wouldn't like let me drop it in, but I still got it, and like I just copy and pasted it out of the Atom file.
Okay.
That's fine though, like for future labs as well.
Okay, let me screen share. Can you guys see my screen?
Not yet. I think your screen does lag a little, so please do go a little bit slower. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go super slow. Okay. So just let me know if I need to slow down. So we have our draw figures program right here, and when we run it, or when you guys run it, you can see our shapes that you find in the console printed. So here we have a diamond, an X, and a rocket. And if we look back at our code, the slashes here require 2 slashes. And the reason is that backslash is a special character. So if we were to write like a new line, let's say system.out.print line, and then there's my apples, apples, and then we use this special character with this. Actually, can you put it in here? Oh, thanks. So system and we run it, and the new line would break these 2 strings apart. So that special character is supposed to put the next string and then on the new line. So the reason why there's 2 slashes here is because when we want to use the actual backslash, we would have to use 2. And in order for 1 backslash to show up, we would have to use 2 backslashes. So when we run it, it would show there's 1 backslash as opposed to actually 2 backslashes. And then, so now that we went over that, we can go over question 1 on the quiz. So you guys can pull up question 1 on the quiz. And the question asks, what would system.out.print with 4 slashes print? Yes, those are, so it would print those, but yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Just forget what I said. And then now that we've gone over question 1, I just want to go over what these system.out print lines are. So we have these patterns here that we can look for, and in programming, it's important that we find common patterns. So then when we can write programs that can do the same work. So it's like less tedious to do the same patterns that's already showing up in here. So I'm gonna put you guys into breakout rooms to look for the common patterns that you find in this program. And then hopefully you guys can come up with a name for the common patterns. And I'll give you guys like 5 minutes to come up with the patterns. And I'm gonna put you guys into your breakout rooms. Sorry, I'm gonna.
Got it working.
Okay. Wait, what was wrong with it?
I think I did, like, I messed it up because I did the, I just deleted the module info.java or something like that. When I should have just
Oh,
not created it at all, because you remember how last semester we had that issue where like some students would create it and then we were like, oh yeah, just delete it and then see what happens. And when they did just
and it
deleted
didn't
it,
work.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, Aiden, did you come in a little late or? Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I get like scared when I like talk to people.
No, you're perfectly fine. You do awesome. Okay, where are you in the lab? I'm so sorry. I was trying to answer a question on here where.
So we answered question 1, and then I put them into breakout rooms to look for common patterns.
Okay. There's one person that said that they're having a source and definition are the same error. Do you know what that is? Because this Jian Ren said that. Oh no.
You're saying that to just you?
No, it's on the chat.
Okay.
Elias said, make sure the name of the lab matches the one that you downloaded. I don't know what that means.
I'm sure that the are they talking about like the Java file or?
It shouldn't affect it, I don't think.
I'm getting the errors. Dak, so we just put other people into breakout rooms to look for patterns in our program.
Oh,
Do you
okay.
need any help with, like starting or?
I'm sorry?
Do you need any help like starting the lab or anything?
Oh, no, I already finished the quiz yesterday.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to
There's, like,
assign you
something
to a
about
breakout
boxes.
room? Oh, sorry.
Was it something about boxes, right?
Kind of. It's essentially getting you used to figuring out when to break things into their own methods so that you can reuse code without copying and pasting.
Okay. Yeah, I think I did that one. Do we have to turn in anything other than our submissions for the quiz?
Nope, that's it. Okay, I'm gonna join room 3. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Mhm.
Hey everyone.
Hi, we can't share our screens.
Oh, I don't think I'm actually supposed to allow you guys to share your screens. I'm so sorry. I think
Oh.
you're just supposed to discuss it. But what did you guys come up with?
Well, some of us can't get it open.
Oh,
So
okay.
Not working.
that's our like problem. That's why we're trying to share the screen.
So you guys can't even open Eclipse and like click and drag it in and open that?
My problem was I can't like download the file for some reason, and it might just be because I don't have the app, I guess. I don't know. I'm on a new computer, so I'm trying to figure
Okay,
it out.
now try sharing your screen and then let's see.
Okay, I also have an issue that I would like to get resolved.
Yeah, for sure.
The right screen if you're I have too many things open. Okay. So I don't know if you guys can see that now. But yeah, when I go into like my with like here,
Yeah.
and then I go to download it, it tells me that.
This
So
file does not have an app associated with it. Please install an app, or if one is already installed, create.
I just couldn't figure out which app it was. I was like, oh,
Do OK and go into your file explorer.
File Explorer. Here, wait.
Click that and then go to downloads because it seems like you've downloaded it 5 times.
Yeah, I did it quite a few times. I was trying to figure it out. And
Yep. And so you seem to have it. Just click and drag that into your Eclipse.
okay. All right. I'll try that. I need to oops. Oops.
Maybe just like go to your left.
To my left. Here, wait.
Yeah.
There we go.
And so you're gonna have to click and drag it directly into that that gray package box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Do I need to like delete that now?
You could just exit out of it.
Exit out of it. This part?
Yeah, exit that,
Okay.
and then just click and drag it into that
To the
gray.
here. Okay.
And then do okay. And okay, now do that drop down because there seems to be an error.
Right.
That's the same thing that's wrong with mine.
Okay, now let's,
Okay.
can you double click on that? And then it says, can you hover over that? You see how draw figures has a red squiggly? Can you hover over that? Don't click it, just hover over that red squiggly on line 3.
On line 3.
The public type draw figures must be defined in its own file. Okay, right click on that draw figures in your package explorer and rename it to just draw figures without that parenthesis 1.
In my
I
over
figured
here.
Mhm.
Never mind.
Right click. And then
mine merged.
Refactor.
sorry, what?
It's called refactor, so go down. Like
Oh, okay.
CS, we don't use like rename, we use refactor.
Refactor.
Up.
Oh, there.
And then do rename. And then get rid of that 1.
Oh, okay.
I'm not entirely sure this is it, but go for it. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All fixed. All right, I'll stop the share.
Nigel, I'm so sorry. Is that how you pronounce your name?
I don't really care. It's Nigel. I fixed it. I just named the package like one letter incorrectly from what I had my package saved as, and now it works. So we are all good.
Okay, cool. Very briefly, maybe even if you guys don't discuss it, that's fine. I think we're going to close these breakout rooms. But I'll see you guys back in the main one.
Okay.
To ask him.
Breakout rooms.
Okay.
What time does this lab end?
35?
11:35.
Okay, cool. I might have to zoom on this. Okay, hopefully as people are filtering back in, they'll get caught up to speed. But let's get back to the lab. What did you guys come up with? So what common shapes were there? I think that was the question in the lab quiz. What are some common parts that you found in the text shapes?
We came up with upside down V, right side up V, and box.
Awesome, cool. And so box, does that just encompass just a single box like this or like this entire rectangle?
I think we were thinking just like a single box, but I guess the entire rectangle could also work. But you could make longer rockets if you just had single boxes.
Right. Yeah. I really like what you said there. If we wanted to make an even longer like rectangle, we can just do a singular box. But yeah, I really like that, what you said. Okay, so let me go back to the lab instructions so I don't get ahead of myself. Useful ability to go, let me just also open chat. Do we mean that the literal sense or in the way things are shaped? In the way things are shaped, I don't really understand what you mean in the literal sense.
I think what he mean, our group was talking about the same thing. My camera went out again. I think what he's saying is basically when it says a V and an upside down V, like specifically, there are none, but there is the shape of those. So
yeah.
Yeah, so I think it does mean the shape.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, not the literal sense then. Good catch.
Okay, I have a question then. So with the plus and then the straight lines, we won't add those in because those are just parts making the shape?
So if you have just a plus, what would you be using that for? Because again, if you think about it, as programmers, we don't like repeating code. That isn't what we call good programming practice. So what programmers do instead of repeating code is we section things off into their own methods so that we can just call that method and it will perform a similar action each time. So if I said, okay, print out a box, rather than copying this code every time that I want to print out another box, like this system.print, and say that I wanted, again, like someone had mentioned, to make this even bigger. And I wanted to make a rocket that looked like this. I don't want to repeat that code. What I essentially want to end up doing is just say, call a method that says like draw box. And I just have to call that. And your computer is smart enough to know and connect the dots. When it says call this method, it knows how to go up into the method and just execute that method, which has just these lines of code. Okay. I hope that answers your question. If you just have a singular plus, you're gonna say, like, you're gonna call a method that says draw plus, and it's gonna print out a plus. And then if you have like a method that says draw hyphen, you're gonna have to call that method 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And we don't want to do that just to accomplish making a line. We just want to, if you just even want to have a method that says create line, we can copy this line of code into its own method. And every time you want to create a line, you just have to call the method, which we will do here in a second. And it should be able to successfully draw a line every time you call that method. So you don't just want a small chunk of code that says draw plus, because you're gonna have to do this like draw plus, draw hyphen, draw hyphen again, draw hyphen again. And even with this, each time you call system.out.println, it will print out its own, like whatever is in the parentheses and these double quotes on its own separate line. So you're going to end up having these characters all with line breaks between them. So they're all going to be on their own separate line. And we want to have it contiguous like this. Okay, all on its own same line. Okay. So we have this answered. By the way, great questions. Okay. Computer science. Okay, we want to restructure the program. Now convert the main function into its own methods. Okay, so you guys had said that you guys saw an upside down V, a V, and a box. Okay, and I'm going to say that when we create a box, we're going to create this big box here. And so we want to create it its own separate methods to essentially perform these functions without repeating the same code, like this code X amount of times every time we want to create an inverted V. So let's make a method and let's call it draw inverted V. So to make a method, the method header is going to follow a similar like pattern. It's going to be like public static, and then right here, what goes after static is called the return type. And so we're going to do a return void, and return void means return nothing, just perform an action, and then don't pass any information back to wherever we call this. Okay, and then I'll further explain this later. But we're going to have this as a void return. And then what comes after the return type is the method name. And I said that we're going to be doing this inverted V. So the opposite of void is anything that isn't nothing. And I know that sounds like the dumbest response, but you can have like a return int. Like, so it returns back a number to you, or a return string, which will return back like some string or like a sentence or a word to you, or return char. There isn't actually like an opposite of void unless you want me to say that it's return something that isn't nothing. Most theoretical question. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna have this public static void because we don't want to give anything necessarily back to where it was called. We don't want to return anything back to where we call this method. And this method, I'm going to name it draw inverted V. Okay, and then after this, we have parentheses. We'll go over what those parentheses means later. parameters go in here. And parameters, like you learned in lecture, is essentially where we can pass information to a method. Okay. So for this, you don't really need any information. You just want to perform this, these 3 lines of code, which is to print that. Okay. So we want to call system.out.println on the top of the inverted V, the middle part, and the bottom part. Okay, and I just did a Command X, which is like to cut, and then Command V, which is to paste. You can also do a Command C to copy and a Command V to paste it, but then you just have to delete these 3 lines of code in main. Okay. Very similar in fashion. We're going to do that with the V, because you guys said again, there is an inverted V, there's a V, and then there's a box. So let's make the box method. So again, it's going to be public static. And for this one too, we don't want to pass anything back to wherever we are going to call it. So it's going to be a void return type, and then the name of the method, which we are going to call it draw V. And then afterwards, we're also going to give it parentheses and then an open bracket. Now I'm going to copy the code that essentially prints out a V, and I'm going to cut and paste it. Okay. And so then I can also get rid of all of the code that prints out a V. I'll wait to do that actually. The last thing that I actually want to do is to make this draw box method too. So let's do this public static void draw box with a parenthesis, oops, and then open curly brackets. And then for this one, I want to copy that box portion of what was printed and just paste it directly up here. Okay. So right now, if you go back down to main, or actually just looking at your code, you should have 3 methods. The method that's called draw inverted V, a method that's called draw V, and then a method that's draw box. Now, if you go down to your main method, and if you weren't like me and you kept that code that was like drawing these everything within main, I want you to delete the codes that was in main and replace it with the a call to the method that we wrote. And how we call the method that we write is right here. What initially was up here was a inverted V. So we call our method just like copying the method name with parentheses and a semicolon. Okay, so that tells our code, hey, go to this draw inverted V method and execute any code that is within this method. Okay. I'm going to leave this empty print statement here because it seems like he wanted a gap. Right here, this is our draw a V method. So I'm going to copy this, take out the lines of code that draws that V within main. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to call the draw V method. So again, it's just the name of the method with the parentheses and a semicolon. And we will do the same for this inverted V. Let's get rid of this, draw inverted V. Okay. This one is another inverted V. Okay, so up until this point, we've only ever drawn a V and an inverted V. Now let's draw that box. So we're going to get rid of all of this code down here and just call our draw box method. And then one last draw inverted V. So right now your code should look something like this. And you can see how we aren't repeating these huge blocks of code. We are just repeatedly calling the methods so that it performs that several times, okay, whenever it's necessary. So now if we run that, it should print out the same thing without all that coded within our main method. So let's run it. And awesome. It's still printing what we want it to print. Okay. So for question 3 on your lab quiz, it says, for these new methods, you created that draw one of the subshapes. What return type is used? Again, following our method headers, we have public static, which you shouldn't have to worry about yet. This is a pretty large concept to wrap your head around. I know you guys will go into this later on, but for right now, don't get too hung up on the public static. Just know that after public static is our return type, and then after our return type, we have the method name. That should help you answer question 3. Okay. Last thing that we're going to discuss in this lab, but I also do want to go over different types of returns later if we have time. The last portion of this lab, Professor Johnson does say that within the straw box method, there is a label. And if we wanted to change that so that it isn't always printing out CS1410, we want to pass our method a string, which is like a word with that is essentially identified with double quotes. That's what a string is. And we want it to be just anything overall. So if I just wanted to say, hi, my name is Lee, I should be able to do that without hard coding it in. And this is important because say that you had like some story within your program and the story has a main character named John. And if I wanted to change the main character's name to, I don't know, Susan or something like that, I don't want to go and parse through that entire story looking for every time the word John occurs and replace it with Susan. I want to just be able to change it once and then have it percolate down and change all of the occurrences of John. Okay, and so similar fashion here, we want to change this label to be any string that we pass into it. And again, I mentioned this earlier in passing, that these parentheses that we have within the method header, this is where we pass information from our main method to the method that we are working with, if that makes sense. So in our drawbox method, we want to pass it a string that was given to us in main, okay? And so to indicate this, we have to essentially specify what type are we passing into this method parameter, and then give it a variable name. So I'm going to call this label. So the type is a type string. And again, in Java, there are, or a lot of programming languages, there's types like ints, strings, characters, doubles, floats, all these types of types. And string is just an instance of a type, okay? And then we also have a variable name. Now, in order to use this, again, we don't want to always print out CS1410. We want to pass in what the value that is stored within the label, okay? And does anyone remember how to use the value that is stored within our parameter variable name in our method? So how do we use the value stored within the variable label?
You can just call the label. So like how I would do it in this case, it would be quotations mark, the line, quotations mark, and then the plus, and then label, and then another plus again, and a quotation mark, line, quotation mark.
Awesome. Okay. I love that you said that and that you were so explicit about it, because, and a lot of you guys are tossing it into chat too with string concatenation. Yes, that's also what we call it in Java. This is called a string concatenation. And a concatenation is just a fancy term to say, take these, like a list of strings and just combine it. That's concatenation is combination, essentially. So we want to combine all of these strings or characters or whatnot. Okay. And so we concatenate it with plus signs. And if I run this, and I can't run it yet because I have this red squiggly line underneath this drop box. And it's complaining to me because if I hover over it, do not click, don't do anything, just hover over it. The error message says the method draw box with a string parameter in the type draw figures is not applicable for the arguments. Great point that they're pointing out here. So anything that, whenever you call a method, anything that you put into the parentheses down here, that is called an argument, okay? And then in the method itself, this is called a parameter. An argument, you pass arguments, and it is caught and stored as a parameter, okay? So in this draw box, I'm gonna pass in an argument with double quotes because again, we specify that we are passing in a string type. I can't just pass in 1410 2 because we specify here that is a string. We are not passing in an integer because this is an integer. We can pass this in if we surround it with double quotes like this, because now I remember that I said that strings are identified with double quotes. So now this will be read in as essentially a word, not a number. Okay. So I'm just going to, rather than doing 1410 I'm going to do David. Okay. And so it will come up here. And now label will have the value David stored into it. And when we call that variable name in a print statement, your program will automatically retrieve the value stored in our variable name. So it won't print out the variable name, it will print out the value stored in it. That's very important for you to understand, okay?
Can an argument have more than one set of parameter?
Sorry, one more time?
Can an argument have more than one parameter that you've defined?
Yes, so if we want more than one parameter, we just have to specify that we want more parameters. So let's say that we want a another parameter that's an int, and I'm going to call it, name it number. We are then going to have to pass in a number whenever we call this method, because we specified if you want to use this method, you need to pass in these arguments. And yeah, okay.
Then I'd assume that they need to be in the same order in your when you're calling them as they are in your argument.
Great point. Yes, you would have to, if you do a string and then a label, you can't just pass it in any order that you want. Say like 5 David. That's not how Java works, or I think all programming languages work. You have to do it in the order that you specified. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, for sure.
Why do we have to follow string with the square brackets in the main method, but we don't follow string with the square brackets in the drawbox method?
Okay, so wonderful, great question. And this is a very high level question and topic to essentially review over in later CS courses. But essentially, your main method is different from all your other methods that you will create in Java. Your main method will take in arguments from the console, or whenever a user might, like if you have a program that you say, hey user, or anyone that I'm presenting this to, give me, I don't know, a number or give me a file that I want to work with. And say that you want to run this drawfigures.java Java program with using a file, a number, and some string. So I don't want to get too far into this, but let's gonna type COVID. I don't know. I can do this.
Yeah, so you're like this, like learning how to use a string array in the main method. You learned that in 2420 on like the last 2 assignments, I believe. And it's pretty much like reading a file and then generating like random sentences. So basically the string argument, the arguments take in like a file and then it'll use that information, and then in the main method we can generate random sentences, at least for that assignment.
Yes, so to add on to it, you don't need to know this yet. I'm going to go over this very briefly because again, this is a really like deeper understanding than you need to know in this class. So when you compile this, you have to essentially, what is going on under the hood is that your compiler is calling your Java file and then passing it some certain arguments. And so again, arguments is essentially information that you're passing on to a method. Remember that. These are the arguments, and it is saved into an array so that each argument has its own index within the array. So this hello world.java, it's a file name or something like that. This will be stored in a certain position within your array. This number 2 might be stored into another position of the array. And this literal string that says hi will be stored in a different section of the array. And then when you're running your program, it essentially will take that information from the certain order of arguments within an array. And if you're unfamiliar with an array is, don't sweat it. It's a bigger topic that you'll learn in a couple of weeks, okay? The main method for the class, yes. So main, you don't ever really want to call any other method within your Java class main, because there should only ever be one main method within a Java file. Okay, but again, don't sweat too much about this string array args because this is an array, it's not a string. And we'll go over this later. But I ran this, by the way, and you can see that from this label and this specific line call, it did print out David the way that I wanted it to. Okay. And if I change this here, hi, David. I hope he watches this over. It'll be a hoot and a holler. Okay. It should change it to hi, David. So again, when you print out the variable, it will automatically pull the value that's stored in the variable and print it out to the console. So let's go back to the quiz to make sure that you guys have the answers to that. Hopefully you guys have the answer to this. If not, it may or may not be on my screen right now. Take a moment to answer that. Question 5. Okay. What could you replace the plain box method? What could replace a plain box method in your code? Okay. I'm going to zoom through this answer right here. So one of the students in here did say that we could create just a regular small box like this method. And I'm about it, so let's do that. Public static void draw plain box with no parameters. And I just want to draw that plain box. So I could get rid of that and then draw labeled box, goes right here. So rather than doing this draw box, I want to do draw plain box here without any arguments. I want to draw labeled box with some string. Hi, David. And then I want to close it off with a plain box. So draw plain box. Okay, that hopefully it still looks the same, which it does. Awesome. So what could replace the plain box method in your add multiple print line statements in main where you want the box? Comment out the box method and uncomment when needed. Use the label box method with spaces for the string. Use inverted. Oh, I see what he's trying to say. Okay, so sorry. This is what you would do if you wanted to create even more methods. Let's go back to my initial implementation because I read that weird. Okay, so he's saying, okay, what if I don't want this to have a label in it? What if I just want one of these plain boxes? What should I do? So I don't even want a label in here.
Use spaces for the string.
Ah, awesome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm doing 6 because he says that there's 6 spaces between each side of the box. So, and you also have to encompass this with quotes because these spaces are actually considered literal like values. Like, yeah, they're valid like characters for a string. And now you have a regular box.
Wouldn't it be easier to like define a variable for rocket name, a variable for plain box as just 6 spaces, and then call those in? If you want a plain box, you call in the spaces variable, and then call in the rocket name variable if you want a label box.
That's a really good point. And another good point to make here, and if you guys want to leave, feel free. This is the end of the lab. But one thing that you do also have to consider, so one of the challenges of being a good programmer is knowing the good balance between when to create a method and when to understand that there are too many methods. So if we can accomplish the same thing in a single method, we kind of want to keep that because we want a method to be general enough so that you can use it multiple times and you can reuse it. We don't want it to be too specific, or else we're going to be stuck with a method that we might just use once, you know? So make sure that your methods are general enough. And so it is a very precarious balance between understanding when to split things up into its own method and understanding when it can, like, a method can be doing a huge chunk and still be general enough to be reused multiple times. Okay, so yes, I think you can also just keep this like that. And this can also, you can call draw box multiple times like this. But again, that means that you had to call draw box like 3 times. But again, this does give you the general functionality of being able to add a label whenever you want it. What was 5? What could we replace the plain box method within your code? So what can you do to this method to give you a plain box while still having this label parameter? And the answer may or may not be on the screen right now.
I think your code will make something that doesn't look like your output right now because of the way the boxes are made.
Yeah, I think he's talking about the top and bottom line.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that actually might be a caveat. That's a really good point.
So I think if you just take the top and the bottom, like what you did before, then it would be fine.
Like
With
this?
the box. No, like the whole box, but then the 2 lines of line 21 and 22 as another one.
21 and 22.
Yeah, so like keep those separate. Okay, wait. Yeah, like so that's just like the box method, and then 21 and 22.
Essentially. No, yeah, I get it. So I don't think you could really accomplish the same functionality with just what you do. You'd have to actually split it up into 2 different methods. You're right. You're right.
The way I did it was I had the top 3 lines, like at the top of the box and then the 2 blank ones.
Mhm.
And then I made another method for just drawing a line. And then if you just keep calling box over and over, the boxes will look fine.
Yeah.
But then you just have to remember to call the line one for the bottom box.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's actually going to be helpful for I think this assignment that was released the other day. Okay. So any of you guys that stayed, I did talk about return types. You guys feel free to leave. This is just an extra thing that I think is really important to kind of know. Return types means that you want to return something back to the user after you've done something. So say that I wanted to make a method that's like that adds 2 numbers. I want for this, I don't want it to just add it and then just disappear. Say that I want to do something with the sum that I created from this method. The return type then has to be like an int or a double or something like that, okay? And it needs 2 parameters. Let's do like an int x and an int y so that I can add something to it. Okay, so from here, let's just say that I want to do x plus y. We can't simply do that. That means that it just adds it and it doesn't want to store into a variable to like do anything else with it. It just adds it and then disappears. So you no longer have access to the value that gets returned from this. So you want to return the sum, okay? And you can then call this method like any other method and pass in numbers like 2, 2, or 2, 4. Let's do that. This method, once it goes in here and executes this x plus y and return x plus y, this return statement will then say, okay, now down here, after I've finished executing these lines of code, I will now get returned back to me the sum of 2 plus 4, which is 6. And I can store it into a variable called sum. Okay. So when it starts off, before executing this, sum will have no value. And then when it sees that, hey, I need to do a method call, it goes up to your method, performs that functionality that you programmed within your code. And then at this return statement, it will return the value to you. And now this sum, this variable will now be initialized with a value, which is whatever it was returned. Okay. And if I do like a system and I print out sum, it should print out 6. And if I hide this, it prints out 6 right here, okay? Now, one thing that I want to make clear, a print statement is not the same as a return statement. Just because you see it down in the console does not mean that it was definitely returned to where you called that method. So if I had this print statement up here, rather than doing sum, you do x plus y. And I run this, it still prints out 6, but 6 does not mean that it was returned, the value 6 was returned back to where you called that method. I just want to make that clear. Okay. That's all for the lab. Sorry I went over. Thanks for staying back. If this was helpful, great. If you have any other questions, office hours are open, so please feel free to come to us. And if you need support from the teaching staff, we are here to help you.
I have a quick question about the homework.
Yeah, for
if
sure.
If we turn it in early, can we keep resubmitting it for full points if we miss something?
Yes,
Okay.
but after you submit it, after like the due date and the due time, you will start getting deducted points.
Okay.
I have another quick question. So with the queue for office hours, like my link is not working. So like I can't